Good afternoon. My name is Darrell Osby, and I'm the fire chief of the Los Angeles County Fire Department. And as I stand here, I stand here with a heavy heart. And today is truly a sad day and a tragic day for the Los Angeles County Fire Department. And I stand here from the perspective that you see other people do, but I just never thought it would be me nor our fire department family that would suffer this type of loss. As a fire chief, and I always talk to the members of my organization, and I always tell them that their safety is my #1 priority, that I expect them to come to work on time, put in a good day's work, and go home safely. And I recognize, and we all recognize, that the work that our firefighters and firefighter paramedics do is a very dangerous and arduous profession, and in many times they put their lives in danger to protect and serve others when they receive 911 calls for service. But yet, as a fire chief, I never thought that when our firefighters face danger, that they would face that danger at one of our community fire stations. At approximately 10:55 this morning, we had a tragic shooting at a fire station 81 in Agua Dulce, which is one of our Los Angeles County fire stations. And it's with a heavy heart that I stand here and say that one of our firefighter specialists succumbed from his injuries. He was a brave, committed, loyal member of our department for over 20 years. And he was a 44-year-old male who died of his injuries. I had the opportunity to recently talk to his family and other members of our department as it pertains to our fallen member during this difficult time. And you can only imagine how they feel for the loss of their coworker and a loss of a husband, a son, a father, and dear friend. Additionally, at Fire Station 81, a fire captain who's 54-year-old male sustained a gunshot, and he was transported to Henry Mayo Hospital, where he remains in critical but stable condition. Tragically, we learned that the shooter was an off-duty firefighter who came to the fire station. Following the shooting, we learned that the firefighter returned to his house. He barricaded himself. The home was set on fire, and he was also found deceased. And that's under investigation by the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. To ensure the proper care and support of our family members, friends, and team members, I've activated our chaplain program, our peer support team, and our mental health behavioral specialists that are speaking to the families, our co-workers, and our friends during this challenging time. I cannot stand here to express my feelings and the deepest sympathies and prayers to the family and friends and colleagues of our fallen firefighter and our injured firefighter. This morning, when I received the news, it was some of the worst news that I've heard in my career. And as a fire chief, I've dealt with a lot of death and a lot of fallen members of my department. And I've always prayed that we would never have a line of duty death, and never thought that if it occurred, that it would occur in this fashion. I know that as firefighters, we are in a profession of providing assistance to others, but I ask that in this particular situation, that we ask you for your support, that we ask you for your assistance, that we ask you for your prayers in our time of need. This is an ongoing investigation, so I'm limited in the information that I could release. I will have the sheriff and his team come speak afterwards. But on behalf of the entire Los Angeles County Fire Department, I want to thank everybody for their thoughts, their prayers, and their support during this difficult time. While this is under investigation still, I would like to bring to the podium Sheriff Alex Villanueva.
Chief Osby, our condolences go out to your entire family and to the LA County Fire Department and to everyone impacted by this tragedy, obviously including the members of the families involved. Our thoughts and prayers go out to everyone. This morning at 10:53 a.m., our department received a 911 call at 8700 Sierra Highway in unincorporated Agua Dulce, and this is the location of LA County Fire Station 81. Santa Clarita Station deputies, Lancaster and Palmdale Station deputies arrived at the location at 11:18 a.m. You have to appreciate there's quite a bit of distance between all these places, and discovered there had been a shooting at the station itself, 81. Our Sheriff's Enforcement Bureau, Special Enforcement Bureau, the SWAT team, they responded immediately, followed by LASD Homicide Bureau and Arson as well. So this is an ongoing investigation. Right now I want to bring to the podium the man in charge of the investigation, Lieutenant Brandon Dean from our Sheriff's Homicide Bureau.
Thank you, Sheriff. So as the Sheriff indicated, this is obviously very early on in the investigation, so this is the preliminary information that we have as of so far. So as the Sheriff and the Chief indicated, approximately 10:50 this morning, our Palmdale Sheriff Station received a call of a gunshot victim in the 8700 block of Sierra Highway at LA County Fire Station number 81. Deputies from Palmdale Sheriff Station as well as Santa Clarita immediately responded. Upon their arrival, they discovered one victim, male white, 44 years of age, a firefighter engineer suffering from multiple gunshot wounds to the upper torso. He was unfortunately pronounced deceased at the scene. The second individual, a 54-year-old firefighter, captain for the LA County Fire Department, was also suffering from gunshot wounds. He was immediately transported to Henry Mayo, where he was treated and went into surgery, and as far as I hear, is listed in critical but stable condition. Based on witness statements at the scene that were at the fire station when the shooting happened, they gave a name of the suspect and a description of the suspect vehicle. That vehicle was linked to a residence in the 2600 block of Bent Spur Drive, and we know that that suspect that shot those two firemen is also a off-duty fireman that also works at LA County Station number 81, the same location. Deputies immediately started responding to the suspect's residence, at which time they also received a house fire call, and the house in question on the 2600 block of Bent Spur Drive was on fire. As the Sheriff indicated, members of our Special Enforcement Bureau immediately started to respond, and they contained the location. While containing the location, they saw an individual in a small pool outside of the actual residence, appeared to be suffering a gunshot wound to the head. At this time, it's unknown if it's self-inflicted or not, but we know that no deputies fired, and we don't believe anybody else was at the location, so it appears to be self-inflicted. We cannot with 100% certainty say that that is our suspect because we have not made an approach on the residence yet. The house is still burning. Once they feel it is safe to make an approach, our Special Enforcement Bureau officers will make an approach and clear the location. They didn't immediately make an approach because we had gathered information that they believed there was nobody else inside the location and that the one person that we were looking for was outside the location. Again, this is very early on. The actual motive of the crime, we're unsure yet. We still have to conduct interviews with all the fire station personnel that worked at the station all 3 shifts, family members, conduct next of kin notifications, process both crime scenes, first the firehouse, and then ultimately the house that is on fire once it's deemed to be safe to process.
Now I'm going to ask Dr. Contreras with Henry Mayo to come up and talk about the situation with the individual in the hospital right now.
Good afternoon. It's always a heavy heart and deep sadness for any trauma surgeon and for any medical facility on a day like this. And my condolences go to the families involved in this tragedy. And the LA County firefighters are our brothers in the protection of the community as trauma surgeons. First and foremost, I would like to acknowledge the family. Second, I'd like to discuss the shooting. As far as the hospital was mobilized at approximately 11 o'clock and 11:30, in which an active shooting event was occurring. We were mobilized and prepared, and I would like to acknowledge the hospital for being prepared handedly for that event. We received one firefighter in this tragedy, a gunshot wound victim, which we took to the operating room and stabilized him. He's in critical condition. All life-threatening injuries have been addressed, and the recovery process is ongoing at this time.
So now we are going to take questions, and I don't know who wants to handle that from the PIO. Go ahead. Does anyone have any questions? Go ahead.
Yeah. Wait, before.
Oh, you want to do Spanish first? Okay, we're going to do Spanish translation, and then we'll have questions. So hold that question. You'll go first. All right.
A eso de las 10:53 de esta mañana.
All right, while we're listening to Sheriff Villanueva give the Spanish-speaking language an update on what happened today, we are here to basically report and confirm what we've been reporting all day long, pretty much them confirming what you had been reporting, Chris, what happened earlier today regarding the timeline of the shooting, that the shooter was an off-duty firefighter at that very same station. So now it appears this was some sort of workplace shooting. But what was very interesting, they said that they still have not been able to approach the house. It's still smoldering, apparently, and that there is a body outside, which looks to appear a gunshot, self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. But again, they still haven't confirmed if that is the person, but most likely it will be. But they still haven't approached the home yet.
And we heard from Fire Chief Gerald Osby talking a little bit about what happened and very emotional, talking about what happened. And he confirmed that the 2 people who were shot, one of them, one of the firefighters that passed away, he talked about how he was a husband, he was a father, a friend. So you can only imagine what that family and loved ones.
20-year veteran of the department.
Yeah, and the second person was a fire captain, 54-year-old, and he was taken to the hospital, Henry Mayo Hospital, in critical but stable condition. Hopefully he will be okay. We're learning that he's currently undergoing surgery.
Yeah, the doctors said they addressed all his life-threatening injuries. We were reporting earlier that he was shot in the leg. Of course, there's a lot of, trauma that could happen with a shooting to the leg. So at least we know that he's been stabilized, but still in critical condition. And that is the 54-year-old fire captain that we just reported about. The 20-year veteran, the one who passed away, still haven't not received names yet or confirmed names, but he was 44 years old. And again, a 20-year veteran of the department. As for the shooter, he was an off-duty firefighter who apparently came to this station. A shooting took place, and according to witnesses on the scene who told homicide detectives, they identified the person by name. They let them know what car he drove off in, And shortly after that, the house that was located at Bent Spur Drive, the 2600 block of Bent Spur Drive, caught fire, and that's when they said they were able to see someone possibly by the pool with a gunshot wound to the head. But I was hearing earlier, Chris, people saying that he was making threats, the shooter, to other people approaching the house.
We were hearing
What's that?
reports of that. Yeah, it's interesting to hear that this was an off-duty firefighter that was stationed to that fire station. So what the relationship was between him and those other two people, obviously we just know coworkers. How close they were, that we don't know. But yeah, we did hear reports that they're... all right, let's go back to that news conference first. Question and answering
has begun. Let's go.
Con todos los familiares, y entonces podemos determinar eso mismo.
All right, there we go. Looks like he just finished up Spanish speaking.
And questions begin now. Let's listen in.
That's always, workplace violence is some dispute is always a possibility, but until we have interviewed every single one of the potential witnesses there at the scene, all of the employees, family members will be able to ascertain whether or not what it is, and we work on that.
As I mentioned earlier, we had an off-duty firefighter come into the fire station. We don't know what transpired. That's under investigation by the Sheriff's Department. What we do know is that off-duty firefighter shot one firefighter specialist who's a 44-year-old male who passed away. We also know that he shot a 54-year-old male captain who was transported in critical but stable condition to Henry Mayo Hospital. And we also know that that's been linked back to that firefighter's home that came into the fire station. But anything other than that is being investigated by the Sheriff's Department. Is too premature for me to release.
Do we know how many people have been in a fire station around this time?
It was brought to my attention that in this particular station on this day it varies, but this particular shift today would be 3 people: a captain, a firefighter specialist, and actually four, a captain, a firefighter specialist, and 2 firefighters. And firefighter specialist is an apparatus driver. I don't know that, and that's all under investigation by the Sheriff's Department. That I don't know. I'm unable to speak to that, but as mentioned by the sheriffs, any administrative actions or current status of the employees and anything related to today will be investigated and released at an appropriate time.
Are you aware of any past complaints with HR about bullying or about doing things to each other that you were aware of before today? Anything regarding that?
Like I said, that's all under investigation, and when the investigative report is available, then I'll be able to speak more specifically to those questions. I cannot speak to the mindset of the shooter. I can just say that it's very tragic and sad that would be a decision point of one of the members of the Los Angeles County Fire Department, and even more tragic that he came back to a fire station where people were on duty working and shot 2 people. I can't speak to the motive. That's all under investigation. When our firefighters arrived on scene of the fire, we coordinate all the time with the Sheriff's Department. They made a determination based on the safety of our personnel to let the fire burn. Once it gets to a condition where they can go do an investigation, then the sheriff's department and our arson unit will do a more thorough investigation. That's undetermined at this time. Once we're able to make entry, then we'll make that determination. No, I don't.
Chief, do you know the rank of the off-duty firefighter? The rank.
I'm sorry, the rank of the off-duty firefighter is also a firefighter specialist and engineer. He was off today, so the personnel that were scheduled to work today were at that fire station, and then for whatever reason, the shooter came back to the fire station, but he was not scheduled to work today. I don't know his work schedule. I just know that he was not scheduled to work today, and he came back and confronted the on-duty personnel. Yes, so what we've done is that we have our peer support personnel and our mental health doctor and other support from the County of Los Angeles making an assessment of our personnel as we stand here today, and I have a meeting after this to speak to more personnel. So we've relieved some personnel already, and what we've done for the surrounding fire stations is we brought move-up companies from the basin to relieve them of their responsibilities to enable us to have peer support briefings and mental health assessments of our personnel. And from the outcome of those briefings, we'll make a further assessment who should and who shouldn't be at work, and when they'll be able physically and emotionally stable enough to work. If you can imagine, they lost one of their coworkers, and as a matter of fact, 2 coworkers, and another one's in serious condition. So that is an ongoing assessment.
Chief, you said you could relieve another personnel. What do you say to personnel if you meet this situation?
Unfortunately, I have too much experience with dealing with fallen members of my department. I've been with the department now for over 37 years, over 10 as a past fire chief, and I've spoken at over 70 funerals. None as tragic as today, but each conversation I have with the family members and our employees and the friends of their loved ones are different. But you can imagine the proximity to today's event is just very numbing. And in some instances, it's just very hard to even articulate words to express our feelings other than to show our condolences and that we'll be supporting the families and friends.
A few minutes ago, you described the victim that got shot, and because you knew that person, did you know the shooter? Can you describe any interaction that might have happened to him, or what if he was up to?
The only thing I can tell you about the shooter, once again, he was scheduled not to work today. He came back to the fire station for whatever reason. The incident occurred. The rest of the conversation, the rest of your question, is under investigation right now by the Sheriff's Department. That's still under investigation. As articulated earlier by the Sheriff's Department, there was a victim at the fire, but it wasn't safe for us to go in and identify the body, and if this point can even be identified, it might be something that the coroner might have to do, but nevertheless, that's being investigated by the Sheriff's Department. My understanding of the victim is that he was a career firefighter. I'm assuming you're talking about the person that died. He had been in our job for approximately 20 years. He promoted to the position of firefighter specialist, which drives the fire truck. Started off, I believe, as an explorer in the forestry department. So obviously this is a career path for him. He's worked at some very busy fire stations, and even working at Agua Dulce, That's not a very busy fire station, but a lot of dynamics there, particularly this time of the year due to wildfires. So it takes a lot of courage to work there. Not everybody has the courage and skill set to do that. So the feedback I got from his family and his friends and co-workers, truly dedicated, one of our better firefighters, amazing, and a true loss to our department. And the only thing that I can ask is that we keep him and his family in our prayers. I don't know that information.
Chief, our deepest condolences. Within the history of the LA County Fire Department, has anything like this happened before?
Not that I'm aware of. In one other situation, a couple of situations, I've had people commit suicide and unfortunately even a murder-suicide, but those were done on private residences or private property. I've never experienced, or nor am I aware of a situation where a firefighter came in off duty into what we call a safe house, our home, and conducted this type of activity and shooting in a firehouse. That's I have no recollection nor knowledge of that. No. No.
Any word on the firearm, type of firearm, the caliber, and on the timeline of when you guys will be able to get that?
I think that would be a question that the law enforcement can answer.
You want to speak to some of that? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so any specifics on ballistics, we're not going to release at this time. That's something we obviously have to conduct our interviews. So, I mean, these guys all worked on different shifts. I mean, I'm sure you guys are aware of how fire department shifts work. They work 24 hours. So we have to interview all the people that are assigned to this firehouse that worked on all 3 different shifts to basically get into, was there any history between these individuals? When was the last time they saw each other? That's all stuff that we still have to conduct. Obviously, we've only been out here for a couple hours now, and this is going to go on for a while. No. We feel fairly confident that that is our shooter, but we can't say that with 100% certainty. Yes, ma'am. Not to our knowledge, no. Any other questions? Well, again, that speaks to kind of what I just said. We still have to interview those witnesses. They are currently, as we speak now, being interviewed by our Homicide Bureau detectives. So that's something that we will acquire through the interviews.
Good. Okay, that's going to conclude today's press conference. Thank you so much.
And that brings to an end the news conference there by the LA County Fire, as well as Sheriff Villanueva, bringing us up to date on all the things that happened today out there in Agua Dulce. And a lot going on, a lot being told to us here. Still don't know the names of the people involved. They haven't released that. Regarding what happened earlier today, we might as well start from the very beginning. We're told that a shooting took place at the firehouse there. At 8700 Sierra Highway. That's Fire Station 81. 2 people were shot. We now know that one was a fire captain, 54 years old. He had a gunshot. He was taken to the hospital. He's in critical but stable condition. A 20-year-old veteran of the department, a firefighter specialist, 44 years old. He passed away, and as the fire captain there was saying, Very, very difficult situation out there. These are live pictures right now from Sky 2, Sky 9. As you can see, the house there. This was the second scene in today's shooting. The walls still coming down and still a lot of dark smoke billowing. I believe that was earlier then. This is what it looks like right now there from Sky 2 and Sky 9. As I mentioned, two different crime scenes. The second one apparently was the home of an off-duty firefighter. They believe that he was the shooter, came into the firehouse today and then went home, barricaded himself inside the house. A fire was started inside the house, and then apparently a body was found just outside the house by the pool. But something of some interest there, firefighters and investigators have not yet approached the house because they still haven't found that it is safe to do so. As you might imagine, no word if this house was booby-trapped in any way or if there was any other dangers being set there for firefighters to respond to. Out there in the Agua Dulce Acton area, this fire station, Fire Station 81, only 4 people man it at any given time. You have a fire captain, a fire specialist, and 2 firefighters. So when this shooter, this off-duty firefighter, came to the scene this morning, basically it was probably fully staffed, and 50% of the staff there were victims of this horrible shooting. So the investigation continues out here. Again, they still have not identified the body that was found at this house on the street there is 2600 Bent Spur Drive out there in the Agua Dulce Acton area. And so far, as I mentioned, they have not approached the home just yet. Chris Holmstrom now taking a bit of a break. Jasmine Veal joins us now as we continue following this breaking news story happening about 45 miles from Los Angeles, still considered LA County. In fact, it's the northern part of the county.
All right, we are going to wrap up our coverage on CBS 2. We are going to continue with our coverage on CBSN Los Angeles. So we will let our CBS 2 viewers get back to their regularly scheduled programming and see them at 5 o'clock.
Meantime, our coverage here continues on KCAL 9 at this hour in CBSN Los Angeles as well. Breaking news story right there out of the Antelope Valley. Right now, we do know 1 firefighter was killed, another one injured critically, and yet a 3rd off-duty firefighter, now possibly a shooter and 3rd victim in this possibly a workplace shooting.
We saw tears coming down the face of Fire Chief Osby, a very emotional news conference there as the chief talked about what transpired and just saying that he never thought that something like this would happen, that when our firefighters face danger, that they would face danger at one of their own fire stations, and in this case, Fire Station 81, and talking about the firefighter, the engineer, the specialist who was shot and killed as being this brave, who was this brave man, 44 years old, 20 years with the department. He, had to work hard to become that specialist, to become that engineer, to drive the fire engines. And he chose the station, or what it sounded like was the chief was saying his family and friends were saying he chose the station. Doesn't necessarily, doesn't seem as busy as other stations, but you have to be brave because you fight so many of these big wildfires that break out and just major incidents that happen out there near Agua Dulce, and just what a great person he was, and so losing that life. Yeah, the chief saying that today he received the worst news he has heard in his career. As you mentioned, we all know firefighters get injured and some killed battling these flames, especially here in Southern California. Fire season is year-round now. Never expecting it to be a shooting in the workplace here, and so desolate, so remote. These areas are pretty remote out there. Only 4 people work at this fire station at any one given time, and even Sheriff Villanueva said it took them 18 minutes to get out there, strictly because of the distance that it takes to get from the nearest sheriff station out to this area here on Sierra Highway. Took about 18 minutes, so you can tell they're pretty far out there. And I think that makes it even more closer bond too, because you not only might hang out with these people outside of work because it is such a remote area, and the chief saying in his 30-plus year career he has spoken at over 70 funerals, so he knows grief very well and the loss of life. But this just hitting that chord of, striking a chord of just deep, intense sadness and the tragedy that he vowed to keep his firefighters safe, and then to see something like this happen.
Yeah, and earlier I was watching Hermela Aragawi reporting that area there, the homes are few and far between. So my guess is a lot of the people who live out here in this area know of each other. At least they see each other at the nearest store and whatnot. So my take is that a lot of people in this area here are talking. They know of this firefighter. They know where he lived, and the beautiful home that's just destroyed by fire there, as you can see on the right-hand side of your screen. And it seemed, Jasmine, like it was burning for hours. A lot of dark smoke
They couldn't approach.
billowing from it, and they couldn't approach. And again, these are firefighters who are trained to come close, but now you have a situation where did this
safe.
shooter firefighter, did he booby trap the house? Did he set something there to cause even more harm? And we're still waiting for sheriff deputies and investigators to get close. And I'm sure as the night progresses, we'll hear more information and most likely get confirmation that the person who did the shooting is the same person who is deceased at this property here on the left side of your screen.
And getting that information so quickly from the active shooting situation at the department, and then they were able to, the witnesses able to identify the suspect
By name?
saying this is where he lives. You need to go to his residence. And sure enough, hearing about the reports of the fire as they were driving up there, knowing that, okay, something is not right here. And that's why they couldn't confirm that this was, in fact, the shooting suspect deceased in the backyard. But at the same time, they are leaning toward that conclusion. But they had to surround. We saw SWAT team members being airlifted out by helicopter. They had been stationed at a very large perimeter so no one could come and go in case there were other suspects. I mean, they just didn't know at that point. Were there other victims at the house that was going up in flames? And so that's how they were able to locate the suspect, the shooting suspect, so quickly by using those witness statements to figure out what was happening.
Yeah, those witnesses told investigators what car he was driving, his name, and by that point, most likely they knew exactly where he lived. Something that the chief also said, Chief Osby, was that the chaplain program has been alerted, and they're out there in case anyone needs to speak with anyone, as well as mental health specialists. And I'm sure this is something that we're going to be hearing over the coming days. In fact, we've been talking a lot about it in the news. It's been something that's been coming up quite a bit, and that is mental health. In fact, at 4 o'clock, we're going to be going into depth on that. And most likely this could have been a situation where somebody may have had a problem, no one addressed it, and things escalate. You just never know.
I know. I was talking earlier with Chris about the red flags, and we always say hindsight's 20/20.
Right.
But in these shooting situations, workplace mass shootings, you think, oh, why couldn't have someone said something that this man or woman, they were on such a dark path or trajectory that would have led to a shooting like this, or what were the warning signs, if there were any at all, or if whether
There may
it was
not have been, right?
a simple argument just gone really bad. And the captain too, thank goodness the chief saying that he's in critical but stable condition. The 54-year-old fire captain transported to Henry Mayo. We heard from the doctor from Henry Mayo, and they went into their own game action plan when they
were
hear
ready
about
for more,
they were ready for more victims. And as soon as they heard about that active shooting at the fire station, jumping into that kind of action, I mean, the adrenaline that was going through the nurses and doctors, and when they hate to hear something like that.
And the good news is the doctor said the fire captain was brought in, rushed right into an operating room. They were able to stabilize his critical injuries, his life-threatening injuries. And right now, it's just about the road to recovery. Make sure he stays stabilized, that there's no excessive amount of blood loss or whatnot. But it seems like doctors did everything they could to save his life, and that's what they've done. And of course, he's got a story to tell as well. Speak with investigators at some point to discuss exactly what happened here, because the fire captain is the head of that fire station, followed by the fire specialists who drive the apparatus, and then the 2 firefighters. So we know of 2 people shot, and then the shooter dead at the scene of his home that he set on fire. So why did he set on fire? We don't know, right? Again, we're talking about so many different moving parts here, and we're putting them all together. Luckily, in that 3 o'clock news conference, we did get a lot confirmed that we had been reporting, whether or not, I'm sure people in the area were concerned, is there still a danger out here? And thank goodness that is not the case. You can see here as Sky 9 opens up the shot there, just the amount of distance between properties, between different areas. It's quite out there.
Yeah,
Yep.
and not being able to speak to the mindset of the shooter, but that he came back to a place where people were on duty, they were working, and the fact he was off duty, but he was targeting. He knew exactly what he was doing and who was on shift that day, and shooting those 2 firefighters. And they couldn't speak to a motive, but they are interviewing. I mean, how many? They said there were 3 shifts that they have to interview. These are 24-hour shifts. What transpired? What led up to this? Not only the 4 people there at the station at the time, but all the 3 shifts that have passed through, that passed through Fire Station 81.
Who knew what and where, the red flags you're talking about. They said he was an off-duty firefighter. Again, what is the meaning of that? Was he off-duty, meaning he wasn't working on that shift, or was he no longer working? Was he laid off, or was he taken away from that firehouse? No word, right? And again, we're very curious to know the names of the men involved here. They're heroes for the most part, of course. Firefighters do always, they run to danger when everyone else is running away from it to put out fires and make sure everyone stays safe. Again, we want to know more about them and also what led up to something like this, because this could also be a teaching moment, a learning moment for others to watch out, to see if something like this pops up again.
And take care of each other, ask and make sure everyone's doing okay. And I just want to honor that firefighter who lost his life today, the victim, that he had been on the job for 20 years. This was a career path for him, according to family and friends that told the chief. I mean, he had worked at some of the busy fire stations in LA County, but the chief saying not everybody has the courage and the skill set to do what this firefighter was doing, that he was a truly dedicated man, one of our better firefighters, and a true loss.